Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every relationship when someone begins to pull away. Not because of something you did wrong, but because of who they are. It's confusing, frustrating, and even painful. But in that very moment, you hold more power than you realize. And that power lies not in chasing, not in questioning, and certainly not in begging for attention. It lies in ignoring the distance and standing firm in your self-worth. You see, when a man starts to withdraw, most people instinctively do the opposite. They lean in. They send more messages, initiate more conversations, and desperately try to fix the connection. But every time you chase someone who is pulling away, you communicate one message. My value depends on your attention. The truth is, your value was never up for negotiation. And the moment you stop chasing, you remind both him and yourself of that truth. Ignoring a man who creates distance isn't about playing games. It's about protecting your peace. It's about understanding that your energy is sacred and should never be spent proving your worth to someone who isn't showing up for you. When you choose silence instead of desperation, something powerful happens. One of two things will occur. Either he realizes what he's losing and comes back with genuine effort, or he continues to drift. And in doing so, shows you he was never truly meant to stay. Either outcome is a win for you, because you're no longer attached to someone else's inconsistency. Remember, this distance is a mirror. It reflects intentions, priorities, and emotional maturity, and by not reacting to it, you force the truth to reveal itself. Self-worth is the foundation of every healthy connection, yet it's the first thing many people abandon when someone begins to pull away. When a man creates distance, it's natural to start questioning yourself, to wonder what you did wrong, what you could change, or how you might win him back. This internal spiral comes from a deeply rooted fear, the belief that his withdrawal is a reflection of your value. But the truth is, his actions say far more about where he is emotionally than about who you are. The moment you anchor yourself in your self-worth, everything changes. Self-worth is not arrogance, and it's not stubborn pride. It's the quiet, unwavering understanding that you are enough exactly as you are. It's knowing that your love, your time, and your attention are gifts, not rewards for someone else's approval. When a man begins to distance himself, that's not an invitation for you to shrink or hustle harder for his affection. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate to yourself that your sense of value does not fluctuate based on someone else's interest. Imagine your attention as a currency. Every message you send, every effort you make, every piece of emotional energy you give away is an investment. Now ask yourself, would you keep investing in a company that keeps losing value and refuses to show signs of growth? Of course not. Yet, when it comes to relationships, many people keep pouring their emotional energy into someone who is clearly pulling away, hoping that more investment will change the outcome. But love is not about convincing someone to stay. It's about showing up authentically and allowing them the space to choose you. And if they don't, knowing that it has nothing to do with your worth. When your self-worth is solid, you no longer interpret someone's distance as a personal rejection. Instead, you see it for what it is, a sign of where they are in their life, their emotional availability, or their level of interest. And that clarity allows you to make empowered decisions rather than reactive ones. Instead of chasing someone who's walking away, you pause, you breathe, and you remind yourself that you bring immense value to a relationship, and that value deserves to be met with equal effort. It's also important to understand that people test boundaries consciously or not. Sometimes, when a man pulls away, it's not because he's lost interest, but because he wants to see how you'll respond. Will you compromise your dignity to get his attention? Will you make excuses for his inconsistent behavior? Or will you stand in your worth and refuse to accept less than you deserve? The answer to those questions will determine the dynamic of the relationship moving forward. If you chase, you teach him that distance is a strategy that works. If you stand firm, you teach him that your love isn't something to be taken lightly. Self-worth also changes the way you talk to yourself in these moments. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you begin to ask, "Is this situation aligned with what I want?" Instead of thinking, "How can I make him stay?" you think, "Does his behavior reflect the kind of love I'm seeking?" This subtle shift in perspective transforms your emotional landscape. You stop treating his distance as a crisis and start seeing it as information, valuable insight into whether this connection is truly healthy for you. The most attractive people are not the ones who beg for love or chase validation. They're the ones who know they are worthy of deep, consistent, wholehearted love, and they are unwilling to settle for anything less. When you embody that mindset, you naturally command respect. Your silence speaks louder than any words you could say, and often it is that very self-assuredness that makes someone reevaluate their behavior and come closer. But even if they don't, you remain whole, because your worth was never in question. It was never up to them to define it. And the moment you realize that, you stop giving power to their absence and start finding strength in your own presence. Silence has a power that words often fail to match, especially when someone begins to create distance. When a man pulls away, the instinctive reaction is to fill the gap, to reach out, to ask questions, to seek clarity. It's a deeply human impulse, driven by a fear of loss and a desire to hold on to something that once felt secure. Yet, in doing so, many people unknowingly hand over their power. The more you chase, the more control you give to the person who is withdrawing. But when you choose silence, when you decide not to respond to the distance with desperate action, you shift the dynamic completely. Ignoring someone who is creating space is not about being cold or manipulative. It's about recognizing that your value does not need to be proven through effort. Words can explain, justify, or plead, but silence speaks from a place of strength. It communicates self-respect without needing to say a single thing. When a man notices that you are not chasing after his disappearing energy, it forces him to confront a powerful truth. You are someone who values yourself too much to fight for half-hearted attention. There's a psychological effect at play here. Humans are wired to seek what they feel they are losing. When you continue reaching out, there's no sense of loss for him. He knows you are there, waiting, hoping, and ready to engage. But when you pull back and remain silent, it disrupts the pattern. It creates a space that he must now decide how to fill. That silence becomes louder than any message you could send because it carries weight. It signals that you are not dependent on his attention and that your world doesn't revolve around his decisions. Silence also has a clarifying power. When you stop chasing and give someone the space they seem to be seeking, one of two things happens. They either realize the value of what they're losing and step forward, or they continue to drift away, revealing that their investment was never as deep as yours. In both cases, you gain valuable information. If they come closer, it's because they choose to, not because they were pressured into it. If they don't, it shows you that their absence was not a loss, but a redirection toward someone more capable of meeting you where you are. Choosing silence is not about playing hard to get, it's about maintaining dignity. It's about refusing to beg for energy that should be given freely. Many people believe that love requires constant effort, and while effort is indeed vital, it should be mutual. If one person is always initiating, always repairing, always trying to bridge the gap, the relationship becomes imbalanced. Silence restores that balance by putting the responsibility back where it belongs. If he wants to be in your life, he must choose to meet you halfway. There's another layer to this power. Silence is deeply attractive. It projects confidence, independence, and emotional security. It shows that you are not desperate for connection, but open to one that is healthy and mutual. And ironically, it's often when you stop trying to convince someone of your worth that they begin to see it clearly. Your absence in the conversation highlights your presence in their life. It makes them reflect on the role you played and what life feels like without your energy constantly reaching out. Silence also protects your emotional well-being. Every message you don't send, Every explanation you don't feel compelled to offer is an act of self-preservation. It's a reminder to yourself that your peace matters more than getting answers from someone who isn't offering them willingly. This kind of restraint isn't always easy. It requires trust that what's meant for you will not need to be chased, and trust that you are worthy of reciprocal effort. When someone creates distance, the temptation to speak louder, to try harder, can be overwhelming. But the most powerful response is often the quietest one. Silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's the difference between reacting from fear and responding from self-respect. And in relationships, that difference determines whether you lose yourself trying to hold on or maintain your dignity by letting go of what no longer serves you. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, yet it's often the first thing you give away without much thought. In relationships, people tend to offer it freely, hoping that their effort, care, and consistency will inspire the same in return. But when someone, especially a man, begins to pull away or shows inconsistent interest, it's crucial to remember that energy should be reciprocated. Love and connection are not meant to be one-sided investments. They thrive only when both people contribute equally to the emotional exchange. When a man creates distance and you continue to pour your time and attention into him, you unintentionally send a message that his minimal effort is enough to keep you around. This dynamic sets a dangerous precedent. It teaches him that he doesn't need to show up fully because you'll compensate for his absence with extra attention. Over time, this imbalance not only erodes your self-respect, but also diminishes the foundation of the relationship. True connection requires mutual investment. It cannot be sustained by one person carrying the weight of the effort. Think of your attention like a spotlight. Wherever you direct it, you bring warmth, focus, and energy. But if that spotlight stays fixed on someone who refuses to return the light, you're left illuminating a space that remains cold and empty. When energy isn't reciprocated, it becomes draining rather than fulfilling. The more you give without receiving, the more you start to feel unappreciated, undervalued, and emotionally exhausted. And the irony is that the harder you try to prove your worth through over-giving, the less likely the other person is to recognize it. Healthy relationships are built on a cycle of give and take. When you show interest, the other person responds with equal enthusiasm. When you make an effort, they match it with their own. This balance doesn't just maintain the connection, it deepens it. It creates a sense of safety and trust because both people know they're valued and seen. But the moment that balance tips, the dynamic shifts from mutual partnership to pursuit. One person becomes the giver, the other the receiver, and the relationship loses its equilibrium. Choosing to withhold your energy when it's not being matched is not about punishment. It's about self-respect. It's a way of setting a standard for how you expect to be treated. If someone wants your attention, they must be willing to earn it through their actions. If they want your presence, they must show that they value it by showing up too. This approach doesn't make you hard to get. It makes you someone who understands their worth and refuses to settle for less than reciprocity. It's also important to recognize that attention is not love on its own. Many people confuse constant availability with affection, believing that the more they show up, the deeper the bond will become. But love is not measured by how much you give. It's measured by how much both people are willing to invest. When one person gives endlessly while the other takes without offering the same, it's not love. It's imbalance disguised as devotion. By redirecting your attention inward when it isn't reciprocated, you not only protect your emotional energy, but also create space for clarity. You allow yourself to see whether the other person is truly interested or simply comfortable with your effort doing all the work. Often, when you stop chasing and start mirroring their energy, their true intentions become clear. If they care, they will step forward. If they don't, they will fade away. And that knowledge is a gift because it frees you from wasting more of yourself on someone unwilling to meet you halfway. Reciprocity is the foundation of respect. When someone values you, they naturally want to match your energy because they care about maintaining the connection. When they don't, they won't, and no amount of extra effort on your part can change that. Your job is not to convince anyone of your worth, but to protect your energy until it's met with equal investment. Because the moment you require reciprocity, you stop settling for attention that's convenient and start attracting the kind of love that's truly committed. When someone begins to pull away, it's easy to panic and assume the worst. Questions flood your mind. Did I say something wrong? Have they lost interest? Should I do something to bring them back? But distance, though uncomfortable, is not always a bad thing. In fact, it's one of the most revealing parts of any relationship. When a man creates space, that space becomes a mirror, one that reflects his true intentions far more clearly than his words ever could. Instead of rushing to close the gap, stepping back and allowing that distance to unfold often tells you everything you need to know. Distance has a unique way of stripping away pretenses. When someone is close, they can say the right things, offer affection, and make promises. But when they pull back, their priorities become visible. It's in the silence and the absence that you see who is willing to make the effort to stay connected. If a man truly values you, distance will serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that your presence is not guaranteed and that maintaining the connection requires action on his part. He will close that space willingly because he understands that the relationship matters. On the other hand, if his feelings are shallow, inconsistent, or fading, distance will expose that too. A man who isn't genuinely invested will use space as an escape. He won't reach back out, he won't put in the effort, and he won't try to bridge the gap. This isn't a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of his readiness, his intentions, and his emotional capacity. And that knowledge is invaluable because it frees you from holding onto something that was never meant to last. It's important to understand that distance is a natural part of human relationships. People need space to think, process emotions, and evaluate their priorities. But how someone uses that space says everything about their level of commitment. If, during that period, he takes time to reflect and then returns with more clarity, effort, and consistency, it's a sign that the bond is meaningful to him. If he disappears without explanation or only resurfaces when it's convenient, it reveals that you were never a priority. And that truth, though painful, allows you to make decisions from a place of strength rather than confusion. There's also a deeper reason why allowing distance to reveal intentions is so powerful. It shifts the responsibility back to him. Too often, when someone pulls away, the other person tries to fix it by reaching out, over-explaining, or working harder to keep the connection alive. But that approach only clouds the truth. It creates a false sense of closeness that depends entirely on your effort. When you resist the urge and instead let the space grow, you force the other person to show you whether they are willing to contribute. Their actions, or lack of them, speak volumes. This approach also protects your self-respect. When you allow distance to do its job, you send a clear message: you are not here to chase, convince, or beg for attention. You are open to connection, but only if it is mutual. This stance not only filters out those who are unsure or half invested, but also attracts those who are capable of meeting you at your level. Because the reality is, someone who truly sees your value will not risk losing you to distance. They will use that space to come closer, not drift further away. It's worth remembering that clarity is one of the greatest gifts distance can offer. While uncertainty feels uncomfortable, it's far better than clinging to illusions. If a man disappears when given space, he was never going to stay. If he returns stronger and more intentional, you know he's someone who is willing to grow and build with you. Either outcome gives you the information you need to protect your heart and choose what's right for you. By trusting distance instead of fearing it, you reclaim your power. You stop wasting energy trying to control someone else's actions and start observing them instead. And in that observation, the truth always reveals itself. Whether it's a sign to hold on or a signal to let go. The moment you stop reacting to someone's inconsistency is the moment you reclaim your emotional power. In relationships, reactions often come from a place of fear. Fear of being abandoned, of losing control, of not being enough. When a man starts to pull away or behaves unpredictably, it's tempting to respond immediately, to question, to chase, to demand clarity. But these reactions, although understandable, hand over your power. They show that your peace depends on his behavior. Non-reaction, on the other hand, is a silent but powerful statement. It communicates that your emotional state is not dictated by someone else's actions, and that you trust yourself enough to remain grounded no matter what happens. Inconsistency is a common tactic, sometimes deliberate, sometimes unconscious, that can destabilize a connection. When someone pulls back and then returns, shows interest, and then withdraws, it keeps you on edge. This emotional roller coaster is draining, and it often makes you crave their attention even more. But when you refuse to engage in that pattern, you break the cycle. Non-reaction is how you step out of the game entirely. It's how you stop dancing to someone else's rhythm and begin to move to your own. It's important to understand that non-reaction is not indifference. It doesn't mean you don't care or that you're shutting down emotionally. It means you choose not to respond impulsively. It's about pausing, observing, and deciding whether this person's actions align with the kind of relationship you want. By doing so, you shift from a reactive state to a position of control. Instead of being pulled along by their inconsistency, you set the pace. Instead of trying to fix or chase, you hold steady and wait to see if they rise to meet you. This approach often reveals the truth faster than any conversation. When you react to inconsistency, you remove the pressure on the other person to change. They know they can pull away and you'll still be there. But when you stop reacting, you create space for them to reveal their true intentions. A man who genuinely values you will notice your composure and step up to match it. He will realize that he cannot keep your attention with half-hearted effort. A man who was never serious, on the other hand, will fade, and that clarity is worth far more than temporary reassurance. Non-reaction also sends a powerful message about your self-respect. It shows that you're not desperate for validation or willing to tolerate inconsistent behavior. It signals that you value emotional stability and are unwilling to settle for less. This kind of strength is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who do not let external circumstances control their internal state. By staying calm and composed, you elevate yourself from being an option to being a standard, someone who commands effort rather than chases after it. It's also worth noting how non-reaction protects your emotional well-being. Constantly reacting to someone's behavior, analyzing every message, stressing over every silence, keeps you trapped in a cycle of anxiety. It gives their actions power over your mood and self-esteem. Choosing not to react breaks that cycle. It teaches you to find peace within yourself rather than relying on someone else to provide it. Over time, this mindset builds resilience. You become less affected by external fluctuations and more confident in your own worth. Another powerful aspect of non-reaction is that it creates space for reflection, not just for them, but for you too. When you stop reacting, you give yourself the chance to step back and evaluate the situation objectively. Is this person truly capable of giving you the consistency you desire? Are you holding on because of genuine connection or out of fear of letting go? These are questions that are difficult to answer when you're caught up in reactive behavior. Silence and stillness create the clarity needed to make those decisions with confidence. Ultimately, the power of non-reaction is that it shifts the balance of control. It shows that you are not at the mercy of someone else's inconsistency, and that your happiness is not contingent upon their choices. It's a declaration that you choose peace over chaos, self-respect over desperation, and clarity over confusion. And from that place of strength, you no longer chase after anyone. You allow only those who truly value you to come closer. At its heart, ignoring a man who creates distance is not about playing games or proving a point. It's about reclaiming your power protecting your peace, and honoring your worth. Every time you choose silence over chasing, boundaries over begging, and self-respect over desperation, you send a clear message to the world and to yourself: I am worthy of love that shows up, chooses me, and stays. When you understand that distance reveals truth, that energy must be reciprocated, and that non-reaction is strength, you stop settling for crumbs and start expecting the feast you deserve. And in doing so, you don't just transform how others treat you. You transform the standard of love you accept. So, the next time someone pulls away, don't follow. Stand tall, stay grounded, and let them feel the weight of your absence. Because the person who truly wants to be in your life will never be scared off by your self-worth. They'll be inspired to rise and meet it. Thank you.